My name is Aaron Moore. I'm 35 years old. Too depressing. You really told me my husband's funeral was too depressing? That was what my mother said straight to my face, 2 weeks earlier. On the day I buried Bryce, my 37-year-old paramedic husband, not a single person from my family showed up. While I stood reading his eulogy, my phone wouldn't stop vibrating. 44 missed calls. One message from my mother, "Call me now. Something's gone terribly wrong." They thought that was their worst day. They had no idea I was a senior 911 dispatcher. They had no idea I had already heard the final radio recording from his ambulance. And they definitely didn't know that before sunset, the very words they had thrown at me would become the evidence that destroyed them. I have answered other people's worst phone calls for 12 years. Hamilton County 911. What's your emergency? About 500,000 times, give or take. I have 3 rules, and they have never failed me. Keep the voice flat. Use the caller's name. Count their breaths. My voice has been the last calm thing some people ever heard. That has always been the job. The job did not prepare me for the night my husband's voice came through on the other end of the radio. The communications center sits in a beige building off Reading Road. From the dispatcher's console, you can see 2 things: your call queue and the green pulse of the dashboard that tells you which units are out, which are in, which are about to need you. My headset is a Plantronics with foam pads I've replaced 3 times. My coffee mug is red, says Cardinals in white block letters, and sits on the left side of the console because that's where my hand goes when I'm thinking. There's a yellow post-it on the edge of my monitor, in my own handwriting. Breathe with them. Count to 4. On February 21, 2026, my husband's voice came through dispatch one last time. I was not the dispatcher who took it. I met Bryce Petton in the summer of 2016 at a critical incident stress management training in a basement classroom of the Cincinnati Police Academy. He was 28, a brand new paramedic, tall, lean, and unaccountably gentle. He pulled out a chair for me when I hadn't asked. He told me about a call he'd run the week before. A grandmother with end-stage COPD, the husband on the phone with dispatch for 9 minutes. He said the dispatcher's voice had been the only thing keeping that husband from breaking. He asked if I was that dispatcher. I said yes. "Thank you," he said. "From me on behalf of the man you held together that night." We dated through 2017. We were married in September 2018 at St. Catherine's Park. 60 people. His mother's casserole at the reception. My mother already complaining about the napkin color. Every night for the next 8 years, Bryce left a glass of water on my side of the bed. He never said why. He just did it. The water was always cold, and the glass was always one of the small, old-fashioned tumblers his grandmother had given us. He took the empty one back to the kitchen each morning before he left for his shift. I never asked him to do it. He never stopped. We lost 3 pregnancies between 2020 and 2022. The third one I don't talk about, even now. Early in 2023, Bryce sat down at the kitchen table and put his hand over mine. "I think we are enough. Let's open a different door." We started the adoption process that April. 2.5 years of fingerprints, FBI background checks, 3 home study interviews. On January 28, 2026, our case manager, Pamela Whiteham, left a voicemail. "Aaron, Bryce, congratulations. Home study is approved. Now we wait for the right match." That night, Bryce pulled a white ceramic mug out of the cabinet, a plain one we never used, and wrote on the side in black marker, "For the one who's coming." He put it back on the shelf where I'd see it every morning. 3 weeks after that approval letter, the phone I'd answered for 12 years started ringing for me. The asphalt was bad that Saturday. Bryce was on the 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. shift at Hamilton County EMS Station 17, riding with Casey Vaughn, 26 years old, 2.5 years in, a kid Bryce had taken under his wing without ever announcing it. The rain had started around 4 in the afternoon and never stopped. At 6:30, I texted him, "Be safe. The asphalt is bad." He sent back a thumbs-up emoji. That was the last thing I ever had from him. What I didn't see, because I was watching the wrong screen, was that Bryce's personal phone had already started ringing for the 6th time that shift. From 5:42 p.m. to 9:14 p.m. that night, my mother called my husband 6 times. He answered the first 2. Each conversation was under 30 seconds. He let the next 4 go to voicemail. He never told me. He never complained. He stayed on shift until the very last minute. And then he stayed past that. At 9:14 p.m., my mother left him a voicemail. He didn't listen to it that night. It sat in his voicemail box for 14 days before I heard it for the first time, on a Saturday morning in February that didn't yet know what it was holding. Bryce, honey, I know you're working, but I really need you to swing by Whole Foods in Eastgate on your way home and grab the Veuve Clicquot. Yellow label, 2 bottles, not the rose. Tessa's brunch with Sloane is tomorrow and I cannot get over there in time. You're the only one who will be near there. Be a sweetheart. Don't tell Erin, she'll get prickly about overtime. 38 seconds long. That voicemail would do more damage to my mother than any lawyer. At 9:50 p.m., dispatch sent Unit 17 to 11 one more call. The replacement crew was running 40 minutes behind on a transport across the river. The late call was a non-critical patient transfer to Mercy Health Anderson. A routine pickup. Nothing dangerous. Bryce volunteered. Casey signed off on it. They were going to be home by 11. They completed the transfer at 10:55 p.m. Patient delivered. Paperwork signed. They got back in the cab. At 11:14 p.m. on Ohio State Route 32 at mile marker 27, a 41-year-old man named Brett Sutherland, 3 times the legal limit, no headlights, lost control of an oncoming pickup and hit Unit 17 to 1 broadside on the passenger door. Bryce died at the scene. Casey survived with a broken left arm and a concussion. At 11:44 p.m., the phone on my kitchen counter rang. It was a Claremont County dispatcher named Eliza Crawford. Her voice was professional and very, very soft. Ma'am, this is Eliza Crawford from Claremont 911. There has been an accident involving a Hamilton EMS unit on Route 32. His blue flannel was still on the hook by the door. The tumbler of water he had set out for me at lunch was on my nightstand, half full. The kitchen clock said 11:44. He never made it back to Station 17. For 2 days, I sat in a house that was too quiet. My parents did not come. My father sent one text on Sunday morning. Sorry, honey. We're praying. My sister sent one message that afternoon. So sorry, Erin. We're devastated. She did not say whether she was coming. She did not ask what she could do. She did not call. Bridget Peton came. My mother-in-law, 64 years old, freshly widowed herself 3 years before, walked into my kitchen on Sunday afternoon with 2 foil-wrapped casseroles and a bouquet of yellow tulips, because Bryce had loved yellow tulips. She put the casseroles on the counter and the tulips in the only vase I owned. Then she sat down in the chair across from me and didn't say a word for 3 hours. At the end of those 3 hours, she said one thing. He talked about you on every shift. Just so you know. Every single one. Then she stood up, washed her cup, kissed the top of my head, and drove home to Western Hills. On Wednesday afternoon, a FedEx envelope arrived. Overnight Express. Inside was a Hallmark sympathy card, the kind with a pre-printed verse about angels and gentle rain. My sister Tessa had signed her name at the bottom. Above her name, in her own handwriting, thinking of you, try to enjoy what's left of the day. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't misunderstanding. Folded inside the same envelope, behind the card, was a glossy itinerary printed on cardstock. Tessa's 32 Vineyard Weekend. March 6th to 8th. Cedar Falls, Hocking Hills. 2 pages. Spa appointments. A Friday night welcome dinner. A Sunday brunch with a calligraphy class. She had included it so I would know why they couldn't make it. She thought that was a courtesy. I put the card down on the kitchen table. Next to the card, I put the adoption folder. The orange one, 2.5 years thick. 2 pieces of paper sat on my kitchen table that morning. An adoption folder and a sympathy card. They told me exactly where each of us thought my life was supposed to go next. On Friday morning, February 27th, I called my mother. I told her the funeral was set for Saturday, March 7th at 11 a.m. at Hodap Funeral Home on Hamilton Avenue. I told her I needed my family in those pews. I told her I needed to look out and see them when I read the eulogy. I told her more plainly than I had said anything in a long time. I need you to come. She paused. Then she did the thing she always does when she's about to choose somebody else. Her voice went soft and reasonable, the way you explain to a child why the dog can't come on vacation. Honey, Tessa's birthday weekend is that weekend. We booked the inn in December. Everything's non-refundable. And honestly, sweetheart, a funeral that long is just too depressing. Tessa needs us to be present for her right now. You understand. She said it the way you'd talk about a Sunday matinee that ran too long. I did not raise my voice. I did not cry. I said, okay. I hung up. I went to work. At 2 o'clock that afternoon, I was at my console when my phone vibrated. Marlene Strickland had trained me in 2014. 60 months of ride-alongs, 3 months of mock calls, and a quiet ferocity I'd loved on sight. She'd been a dispatcher for 28 years. She'd been widowed in 2017. By then, she was the assistant supervisor for quality assurance, which meant she ran the line of duty death incident reviews when they happened. One had just happened to me. I stepped into the hallway to take the call. There's audio you should hear before the formal inquiry. I am not going to play it for you alone in a conference room. Come sit with me tomorrow. She did not tell me what was on the audio. I did not ask. I told her I'd be at her office at 8 the next morning. Bring coffee. I'll bring the rest. She was waiting at 8 a.m. with 2 cups and the door already closed. The QA office sits behind glass on the 2nd floor of the communications center. From inside, you can see the entire dispatch floor. From outside, you can see almost nothing. That morning, Marlene had pulled the blinds. On her desk were 3 folders, stacked. The top one was labeled in her square handwriting, Verizon CDR, Peton, Bryce, February 21, 2026. The second said, CAD Incident Review 17 to 126. The third said only, voicemail transcript. She sat down across from me. She did not pour my coffee. She let me hold it. There are 3 things in this room you need to know about. We're going to look at them in order. You can stop at any time. She opened the first folder. Verizon had delivered the call detail records 2 days earlier, expedited because I was the surviving spouse and a county employee, and because Bryce's death had been entered as a line-of-duty fatality. 4 pages of timestamps. 6 rows highlighted in yellow. 6 incoming calls from one number, your mother's, between 5:42 p.m. and 9:14 p.m. On the night Bryce died. Marlene read it the way she read everything. Flat, exact. 6 incoming, 2 outgoing. The 2 calls he made back were each under 30 seconds. Total communication time from her to him during his shift, 14 minutes and 11 seconds. She paused. She moved her hand to the second folder. Now, the part 1 would have given anything not to find. She explained the radio system the way you'd explain it to someone in grief, because grief makes the familiar feel new. The APX trunked radio system records every transmission. Push-to-talk button engagements, vehicle telemetry, dispatch acknowledgements. Standard protocol on any line-of-duty incident is to pull the file and listen for anomalies. There had been an anomaly. A 14-second clip in which the button on Bryce's lapel mic had been keyed and not released. The system had captured it because the system captures everything. Marlene clicked the file. What came out of the speaker was rain. Then windshield wipers. Then Bryce's voice, tired, not angry. The voice of a man at the end of an 8-hour shift that had stretched into the 9th. Casey, real quick, when we get back to station, Remind me to delete a voicemail from my mother-in-law. A second voice, fainter, almost laughing. What now? She wanted me to swing through Eastgate. Champagne run for my sister-in-law's brunch tomorrow. I told her no twice tonight, bro. Yeah. A pause. The wipers steady. Then Bryce again, quieter, almost to himself. The way you say a thing when you've been holding it too long. Tell Erin I love her. And tell her mom I'm not her goddamn errand boy. Casey starts to answer. The transmission cuts. Crash. I asked Marlene to play it once more. I needed to hear it the second time without breaking. I was wrong about myself. I broke anyway. When I could speak again, I asked her whether the file could ever be played in a public forum. She told me yes. The file was part of the line of duty review, and that review was being incorporated into the Hamilton County Public Safety Department's community memorial, already scheduled for Saturday, April 18th at Fountain Square. As the surviving spouse, I had the right to request the file be played during the tribute portion of the ceremony. I had 6 weeks before the county memorial. By the end of that morning, I knew exactly how I would use them. She opened the third folder slowly. She placed a small portable recorder on the desk between us. She pressed play. Bryce, honey, I know you're working, but I really need you to swing by Whole Foods in Eastgate on your way home and grab the Veuve Clicquot. Yellow label, 2 bottles, not the rose. Tessa's brunch with Sloane is tomorrow, and I cannot get over there in time. You're the only one who will be near there. Be a sweetheart. Don't tell Erin, she'll get prickly about overtime. 38 seconds. Then the room was very quiet. Marlene let it stay quiet. She had been a dispatcher long enough to know that silence is its own evidence. Then she stood up and walked to the whiteboard on the back wall. She picked up a black marker. She wrote, February 21st, 2026. Shift 1400 to 2200. Calls, Greer to Bryce, 6, 1742 to 2114. Voicemail, 2114. End of shift, 2158. Dispatch late call assigned, 2150. Transport completed, 2255. Crash, 2314. She drew a line under one row. 2150. Bryce volunteered for the late call because the replacement crew was running 40 minutes behind. She set the marker down. She turned around. She looked at me without blinking. This is not a story about your mother causing his death. This is a story about how your mother spent his last shift treating him as her errand boy. The crash has a different driver, a drunk driver named Brett Sutherland, and he will be answering for his own choices. But your mother does not get to hide behind the crash. The recording exists. The voicemail exists. The pattern exists. And it is not going to disappear because she didn't show up at the funeral. She paused. Erin, you do not owe them what they did not give him. I took out my phone. I opened a blank note. I typed exactly what she had said, lowercase the way I type things I'm trying to keep. Greer Moore. February 21st, 2026. 1742 to 2114. 6 calls. Champagne. I saved it. Bryce had set up his Apple Digital Legacy contact in 2023, 2 days after we signed the adoption application. He had named me. He hadn't told me. He had simply done it the way he did everything, to take care of me in advance of the world hurting me. I submitted the access request the Monday after he died. Apple processed it in 5 business days. On Thursday, March 5th, the email came through. Access granted. I downloaded the archive in my kitchen on the laptop we'd shared since 2021. The white mug on the shelf behind me said, "For the one who's coming." The orange adoption folder was still on the table beside the laptop. I opened the messages folder. I searched my sister's name. I expected 3 threads, a birthday text, a Christmas check-in, 1 thank you for a baby shower. I found 11. 11 threads in 14 months. All of them from her. None of them about anything except favors. Pick up Mom from the airport Saturday. She'll text you the gate. Hey, can you swing by the dry cleaner before 5? Spencer's car battery. You're good with this stuff, right? Mom needs her prescription. I can't get over there till Tuesday. He had answered every single one. Sure thing. On my way. No problem. Tell her 2 hours. And then I scrolled to October 14th, 2025, at 7:22 p.m. 4 months before he died. A single text from my sister to my husband that I have not been able to unread since. Don't tell Erin Mom called you. She'll get all dramatic. Just go grab the wine. Okay. Bryce had not replied. He had let it sit there. Marked read. Untouched. That was his line. He had been holding it for months. He just hadn't told me he was holding it. She had been writing my dismissal for months. I just hadn't been on the thread. I printed all 11 texts on plain printer paper. I put them in a gray folder. I labeled the tab, Tessa thread, October 2024 to February 2026. I closed it. I put it on the shelf next to the gray folder marked CDR and the black folder marked recording transcript. Saturday, March 7th. 11 a.m. Ho-Dap Funeral Home on Hamilton Avenue, Cincinnati. The 2 pews on the left side of the chapel, the ones reserved for my family, were empty. The little placards on the aisle still said reserved, family in cream-colored cardstock with a black ribbon. Nobody had taken them down. Nobody had wanted to. The right side of the chapel was full. Bridget Petton in the front row. Declan Petton, Bryce's older brother, ex-Indianapolis Fire Department radio operator, in a dark suit with a pin taken off a uniform he no longer wore. 3 Petton aunts and uncles. 25 Hamilton County paramedics and firefighters in Class A uniforms. White gloves, gold buttons, name pins polished. Marlene Strickland in row 3 in a navy dress I'd only seen her wear once before, at her husband's funeral 9 years ago. Pastor Holden Sullivan from Trinity Methodist, who would do the graveside reading. About 80 people. 14 empty seats on the left. Declan stopped me before I walked up. He put his hand on my shoulder. He talked about you on every shift. Just so you know. Every single one. I walked to the podium. I tried not to count the empty seats. I counted them anyway. 14. I had written the eulogy 12 times. The final version was 12 minutes long. I didn't list his accomplishments or give them a chronology. I told them about the glass of water on my side of the bed every night. I told them about how he logged his overtime so honestly that other paramedics teased him for it. I told them about the white mug on the shelf in our kitchen. I told them about the 3 rules I had taught him, which he had taught his partners, who had taught their partners, who had taught the next class. Flat voice. Use their name. Count their breaths. Nobody dies alone. I did not cry. I did not let my voice shake. At minute 8, my phone began to vibrate in the inside pocket of my gray blazer. I did not check it. By minute 12, it had not stopped. I sat down at 11:23 a.m. between Bridget and Declan. Bridget pressed a glass of water into my hand without looking at me. I took my phone out of my pocket. 44 missed calls. 18 from my mother. 9 from my father. 7 from Tessa. 3 from cousins I hadn't spoken to in 2 years. 1 message, in all capitals, from my mother. Timestamp 11:23 a.m., sent while I was reading the part about the glass of water. Call me now. Something's gone terribly wrong. I locked the screen. I did not call her back. I stood up and walked with Bridget to the back of the chapel where the reception was waiting. At 1:40 p.m., while I was sitting on the edge of my bed in the dress I hadn't been able to take off, the phone rang. Trooper Garrett Beaumont. Ohio State Highway Patrol. The same trooper who had stood in my living room 2 weeks earlier with his hat in his hand and explained what had happened to my husband on Route 32. Ma'am, I am sorry to be calling on a Saturday afternoon. The vehicle involved in last night's hit and run on Route 32 is registered to a Tessa Moore at an address in Cincinnati. The driver fled the scene. The pedestrian, I need to tell you who he is. He was your husband's partner the night of February 21st. His name is Casey Vaughn. I held the phone. I did not move. Casey tried to call your number 3 times from the ER this morning. He could not reach anyone else. I drove to the OSHP detachment in Batavia in clothes I had worn to my husband's funeral. Trooper Beaumont laid 2 crash reports on the table, both stamped with the same mile marker. He pointed with the end of his pen. Your husband. Mile marker 27. Westbound shoulder. 11:14 p.m. February 21st. A DUI driver crossed the center line. He moved his pen. Mr. Vaughn. Mile marker 27. Opposite shoulder, eastbound. 11:48 p.m. March 6th. A sedan registered to Tessa Moore, driven by her fiancé Spencer Holloway, struck Mr. Vaughn from behind and fled. He looked at me. It is the same mile marker. The opposite shoulder. The same rain pattern. Different driver, different vehicle. Same family connection on both sides of the road. He flipped to a printed statement. Spencer Holloway had driven down from Hocking Hills late Friday night to pick up a specific bottle of champagne Tessa had wanted, stored at a friend's place near Route 32. At the friend's house, he had had 4 more drinks. He had left at 11:30 p.m., headed eastbound. Per the witness statement, Tessa asked me to make sure Spencer got the champagne over to Hocking Hills before the brunch. I told her he had had too much. She said it was fine. He left. He closed the folder. My mother had sent my husband on a champagne run on the night he died. 2 weeks later, my sister had sent her fiancé on one. The road did not care which of them threw the stone. I drove home in silence. When I sat down at my kitchen table at 5:30 p.m., I finally opened the voicemails my mother had left during the funeral. One from 12:08 p.m., during the reception. 51 seconds. I played it on the kitchen speaker because I didn't trust myself to hold the phone. Aaron, you need to call me back immediately. Tessa is destroyed. Spencer made a mistake. He's a good boy. You are in dispatch. You must know somebody. We need to make this softer. Don't let them ruin Tessa's life over this. Call me. Not one apology. Not one mention of Bryce. Not one I'm sorry I didn't come. My father's text, 2:55 p.m. One line, no punctuation. Aaron, your mother is having a meltdown. This is bigger than Bryce. Now Tessa needs you. You owe this family. Tessa had called 7 times. Her last voicemail was 22 seconds. Half of it sobbing. Aaron, please call me back. I can't lose Spencer. Mom said you'd help. Not one apology. Not one question about Bryce. Just the same words, over and over, in different mouths. Make it softer. You owe us. Please help. At 6 p.m., I picked up the phone. My fingers knew the number before my brain did. Trooper Beaumont's direct line. I had picked up the phone for Tessa so many times before. I had unwound her DUI charge in 2022 with a contact at the prosecutor's office. I had covered her late rent in 2020 when her account hit 0. I had paid off her credit card fraud in 2018 and never asked for it back. 35 years of being the dependable one. The body remembers a job long after the mind has decided to quit it. I started to dial. Then I saw the cup. Bryce drank his coffee black with 1.5 spoons of raw sugar. He had made himself a cup on the morning of February 21st and left it on the counter, half full, when he ran out the door for his shift. I had not washed it in 14 days. Brown ring dried into the bottom. I had walked past it every morning without touching it. I looked at it. I thought about the glass of water he had set out for me at lunch on the last day of his life. I thought about the 6 calls my mother had made to him. I thought about the 14 seconds in the cab. Tell Aaron I love her. And tell her mom I'm not her goddamn errand boy. I put the phone down on the counter. The sun was setting through the kitchen window. A March sunset in Cincinnati is gold for about 9 minutes, and then it's gone. The light made the rim of the mug glow. I said it out loud to the empty kitchen, the way Bryce used to say things to a partner he trusted. He held that line for me for years. I'm holding it back for him. I called Marlene. Casey Vaughn asked to see me on April 5th. By then, he had been moved out of the ICU at UC Medical Center to the neurology step-down unit. The traumatic brain injury from the hit and run had been worse than the broken arm from the first crash. He had short-term memory deficits. Some days he would lose the hour, occasionally the day. But he knew who he was. He knew who Bryce had been. And he knew what he wanted to tell me. I walked into his room on a Sunday afternoon at 2 p.m. with the gray folder in my bag. The April light through the window was thin and bright. A small arrangement of flowers from Hamilton County EMS sat on the sill. A paper cup of water on the rolling bedside table. A hospital bracelet on his right wrist. His head was still bandaged. His left arm still in a cast from February. He saw me in the doorway and smiled the way men smile when they're trying not to frighten you. "Mrs. Moore, I've been waiting to be allowed to see you." I sat down in the chair beside his bed. He told me what he remembered. He had been at an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting on the night of March 6th at the Batavia Community Center, a quarter-mile off Route 32. He had been walking home along the shoulder because his doctor had cleared him for no driving for 30 days after the concussion. He had not seen the sedan that hit him. He had woken in the ER at 6 a.m. on March 7th, confused, dosed on pain medication, certain it was still February 21st. He had reached for the phone the nurse had left on his bedside table. He had remembered only one number, the work line he'd dialed dozens of times when he was working with Bryce. He had called it 3 times before a nurse took the phone from his hand because he had begun bleeding through and through. "I thought if I called you, you would tell me Bryce was alive." I was very confused. I thought it was still the 21st. "I'm sorry." I told him there was nothing to be sorry for. He kept looking at the ceiling. Then he told me about the meetings. "I don't know if he ever told you." He probably didn't. He never told anyone anything that wasn't his to tell. Bryce had noticed Casey was struggling with alcohol in his second year on the job. He hadn't lectured him. He had picked him up from his apartment on a Friday night 18 months earlier, driven him to a meeting at the Batavia Community Center, and sat outside in the Honda for an hour and a half in the parking lot until the meeting was over. He had done that for 3 weeks straight. After 3 weeks, Casey had started going by himself. He hadn't missed a Friday since. He didn't tell anyone. He just looked at his partner every shift and decided nobody dies alone. He turned his head on the pillow. Would it be all right if I spoke at the memorial? I've been thinking about it. It's the only way I know how to give the funeral back to him. I told him yes. Marlene had already saved him a place at the front. On March 25th, I found the GoFundMe. A cousin sent me the link. She thought I had set it up. I had not. The page was titled, "Help Spencer Holloway, a Family Under Attack." The fundraising goal was $40,000. The featured photograph showed Spencer in a navy polo, smiling with his arm around Tessa at what looked like a Cincinnati Reds game. The description, written by my mother, Greer Moore, signed at the bottom in her own name, read like a press release for a politician's bad week. "Our daughter's fiancé is being unfairly persecuted by the media. The family needs your support during this difficult time. Our oldest daughter, Erin, is grieving and unable to support the family right now." She had not used Bryce's name. Not once. Not anywhere on that page. He had been erased from the family story 2 weeks after we buried him. 14 people had already donated $1,950. The top 3 donors were members of my parents' Bible study at Trinity Methodist. I screenshot the page. I sat on it for 1 day. On Thursday, March 26th, I composed an email to Pastor Holden Sullivan. He had married Bryce and me in 2018. He had stood at the graveside the day of the funeral, and read 3 lines from Psalm 23, in a voice so gentle it had nearly broken me. I attached 3 files, the screenshot of the GoFundMe, an MP3 of my mother's voicemail about the champagne, and an MP3 of the 14-second recording from the ambulance. I did not ask him to do anything. I wrote 1 sentence above the attachments. Thought you should know what is behind the fundraiser. He replied 4 hours later. Aaron, I will pull the church's endorsement of the fundraiser by sunrise, and I will be at Fountain Square on April 18th. Tell me where you want me standing. 6 weeks. I had what I needed. I waited. Saturday, April 18th. 2 p.m. Fountain Square, downtown Cincinnati. The fountain ran. The wind off the river was cold for April. About 600 people had gathered in folding chairs and standing rows that filled the square from the granite steps to the curb. Paramedics, dispatchers, firefighters from 3 counties, 4 line-of-duty death families, local press at the back with cameras and notebooks. The leadership of Hamilton County Public Safety on a low stage. 4 portraits stood on easels at the front. Bryce Petton on the far left in his Class A uniform, the photograph taken 3 years ago at a community fair. His Class A jacket itself, the real one, hung from the back of an iron chair in front of the stage. The pin over the breast pocket said, B. Petton, Medic 2014. In the 3rd row on the left side of the aisle, my mother sat between my father and Tessa. All 3 of them in black. All 3 of them under the impression they would be invited to the front during the family tribute portion. I had blocked their numbers on March 8th. They had come anyway. My mother leaned over as the bell on the cathedral across the square struck the hour. Her voice was low, designed to be heard only by the seat in front of her. Aaron, we should sit up front with you. Family stays together. I did not look at her. I had stopped looking at her on March 7th at sunset. That was 6 weeks earlier. That was a lifetime earlier. At 2:20 p.m., Marlene Strickland walked to the podium. She did not introduce herself. Everyone at Fountain Square already knew her. I trained Aaron Moore 12 years ago. Today, I want you to listen to what she has learned since. I walked up to the podium. I took the small stack of papers from the inside pocket of my black blazer. I laid them flat on the wood. I did not look at row 3. I looked at the back of the square, where the wind was coming off the fountain and where Pastor Holden Sullivan was already standing, hands folded. I began with 3 sentences. My name is Aaron Moore. I am Bryce Petton's wife. He died 14 days before he was due to meet our adopted daughter for the first time. The square went very quiet. Today I am going to play 14 seconds of audio recorded inside my husband's ambulance the night he died. After that, I am going to read 3 other things into the record, and then I am going to ask you to remember Bryce Petton by the way he held his lines, not by the way other people forgot them. Marlene nodded once to the audio-visual technician at the side of the stage. The recording began. The rain came through the speakers first. Then the wipers. Then my husband's voice, tired, not angry. Casey, real quick, when we get back to station, remind me to delete a voicemail from my mother-in-law. What now? She wanted me to swing through Eastgate. Champagne run for my sister-in-law's brunch tomorrow. I told her no twice tonight, bro. Yeah. A pause. The wipers steady. Tell Aaron I love her. And tell her mom I'm not her goddamn errand boy. The transmission cut. The square stayed silent. 600 people. Not one cough. Not one whisper. Even the fountain seemed to lower its voice. I read the next 3 pieces in order. I read aloud the Verizon call detail records. 6 incoming calls from Greer Moore to my husband's personal phone between 5:42 and 9:14 p.m. on the night he died. I played my mother's voicemail through the same speakers that had just held my husband's voice. Be a sweetheart. Don't tell Aaron. In the front row, Casey Vaughn, in his wheelchair, put his right hand over his eyes. A dispatcher in row 5 began to cry without making a sound. I read aloud the text my sister had sent my husband on October 14, 2025. Don't tell Erin Mom called you. She'll get all dramatic. Just go grab the wine. Okay. Tessa turned in her seat to look around the square. Not one person in those 600 turned back to look at her. Marlene's technician switched the screen behind the stage to a single image. The GoFundMe page. The line, "Our oldest daughter, Erin, is grieving and unable to support the family right now," highlighted in yellow. I read it aloud once. I did not read it twice. Pastor Holden Sullivan stepped down from the side of the stage. He walked to the third row. He bent down beside my mother. He spoke to her for 9 seconds. Nobody in the square heard what he said. Then he stood up, turned around, and walked back to where he had been standing. My mother's face did not move. I had one thing left to say. My mother told me 2 weeks before this funeral that the service would be too depressing. She told me the family was going to my sister's vineyard birthday party instead. And she said it the way you'd talk about a Sunday matinee that ran too long. I looked at the photograph of my husband on the easel. My husband held his line for years so I would not have to carry the weight. Today I'm carrying it for him. And I am not going to do it quietly. I let the wind come in. Family is whoever picks up the phone when nobody else will. Bryce Petton knew that. I looked at Casey in his chair. So does the partner he kept alive for 18 months. I looked at Marlene. So does the QA supervisor who sat with me on a Saturday morning while I learned to live without him. I looked at the rows of paramedics and firefighters and dispatchers. So do the people in this square today. Thank you for coming. Thank you for remembering him the way he deserved. I stepped down from the podium. Trooper Garrett Beaumont in full Ohio State Highway Patrol uniform gave me a single nod as I passed his row. Declan Petton stood up from his seat in the front. Casey lifted his head from his wheelchair. Marlene was waiting for me at the foot of the steps with a paper cup of water. I did not look at the third row. I walked past my mother's seat the same way she had walked past my husband's casket without stopping. Her mouth opened. No sound came out. My father sat down. Tessa cried without an arm reaching for her. On Monday, May 4th, Pamela Whiteham called. I was at the kitchen table when the phone rang, the same table where the orange folder had sat for 3 years, the same chair I'd been sitting in the evening the kitchen had turned gold and I had finally put the phone down. The afternoon light through the window was different now. Lighter, higher, different season. Her voice was the way I remembered it. Careful, slow. Like a dispatcher accustomed to giving people news they aren't ready for. Erin, we have a match. Her name is Bree. She's 4. Her foster mother passed in April. We think you and your home are the right place. I held the phone in both hands. I cried in a way I hadn't cried since the funeral. And it was nothing like the way I'd cried then. That same week, a Polaroid arrived in the mail from Pamela. A small square photograph of a little girl in a yellow daisy print dress, sitting on a porch step with her hands on her knees, smiling at someone behind the camera. I taped it to the cabinet door above the white mug. Bryce had wanted to be the one to make a glass of water on her side of the bed. I told him out loud in the kitchen that I would do it for him. The sun was setting again over the counter. It was a different sunset than the one in March. On Monday, May 11th, I went back to work. Marlene was waiting at my console with 2 cups of coffee. One was hers. The other was in the white ceramic mug from my cabinet, the one Bryce had labeled in marker. For the one who's coming. She had washed it and brought it in for me. Casey Vaughn was back at Station 17 on light duty for the first time in 2 months. At 9:03 a.m., a test call came through on the radio from Unit 17-1. The voice was Casey's. The message was short. Headset clean, coffee fresh. See you on the radio. There was a postcard on my console from Declan in Indianapolis. His handwriting was square and tidy like his brother's. The postcard said, Brother says hi. Take care of his girl. I tucked it under the corner of my monitor, next to the yellow post-it that said, breathe with them. Count to 4. I put my headset on. I picked up the new mug, the one Bryce had written on. I drank from it now. Family is whoever picks up the phone when nobody else will. My husband knew that. I do now, too.